There's over 6 billion people on this planet with so many different genetic combinations that the most important thing you can develop is a self-awareness and an evaluation criteria of what works best for you.
Welcome to the Full Fueled Podcast. Welcome to the Full Fueled Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast.
With your host, Matt Tack.
With your host, Matt Tack.
Your host, Matt Tack.
Who are you?
I'm Dr. Alfred Alessi.
Dr. Alfred Alessi.
Dr. Alfred Alessi.
They know by now, bro. They know by now.
I'm going to set what the new normal looks like in my life.
You're not limited by your genetics.
You have a superpower that is lifting people up. Dude, you look
The only way we're going to get the word out is with you. Live full fueled. Live beyond limits, baby. Let's go.
Welcome to the Full Fueled Podcast. I think this is episode number 55. And your host, Matt Tack.
And Dr. Alfred Alessi.
Go ahead with that.
Man, awesome episode we got today. So, a little background about how we met our guest. I was at the gym, I was training, and I look over, and this guy's doing plyometric push-ups and landmine shoulder presses and just like more functional, but like kind of cooler, like exercises that, you know, most people in the traditional gym aren't doing. And then I look over and this guy seems like he's maybe in his older years. I was like, man, he's in great shape. I want to go talk to him. So we start chatting and then getting to know Steve a little bit. He gives me a little background about himself. He does some really cool stuff as far as endurance training and events and competition and stuff like that. So, man, Steve, it's great to have you on the show. We're really excited to kind of get to know you, let you kind of share some of your experience and knowledge and wisdom with our audience. I think people are going to find a lot of value in what you have. Great to see you, man.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on here with you guys.
Yes, sir. So, man, you've done so many different things. I mean, you've been kind of all over the place. So maybe let's start. Give us kind of a little background as to like how you got into the multi-sport kind of hybrid endurance world and where that originated from, man.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate that I was in the Marine Corps for 28 years. And in that journey, it was a very physical organization and it was about work capacity. And I fell in love with the idea of work capacity. And, you know, inside the Marine Corps, you were required to have a high level of physical capability. You had to have high skills in the physical domain. And, you know, being able to go through that particular part of my career, I went from basically an apprentice to a journeyman to a master to like the last 10 years, I really had it dialed in and understanding how this all comes together. But to wrap it up into one central theme of that experience it was about the accumulation of the greatest amount of strength, power, and stamina that I could possibly get. And then I realized that, hey, I just love being a Marine. I just love going out there every single day and doing this. And, you know, I have a partner who is a Marine. We met about 26 years ago, and we didn't get enough in the Marine Corps. So we started doing what we call civilian expeditions. We just started going off climbing mountains, doing big races, and just loving the fact of it. Every single event became a lab that we would learn more about ourselves. We'd learn more about our team. We'd learn more about training. And we were able to, you know, bring that back into the Marine Corps. So it was this great cross-pollination of two different modalities of being able to bring those two things together. When I retired about 12 years ago, I made a commitment that, hey, I am not giving this up. This is so important in my life that, you know, being able to wake up every morning and being excited to do whatever events on the schedule for that day is absolutely an essential part of who I am. And that led to having to scope down, like the Marine Corps is not paying my bills anymore in regards to, you know, sending me around the world to do these great adventures. So I kind of brought it together into I wanted to become a high performance multi-sport athlete. And I wanted to do it on my own terms. I wanted to take what I had learned, which was to get into unfamiliar terrain, to get into new situations that require new skills and bring it all together. And I really, really focused on mountain athletics and ocean athletics. And mountain athletics is basically being able to run in the mountains, be able to trek in the mountains, be able to mountain bike, be able to climb, be able to ski, being able to do those things for long, extended periods of time. And then the ocean athlete was, hey, I want to be able to get out on the water. I'm a Marine. I lived on the water for so long, and I've enjoyed that aspect of it. want to be able to swim, want to be able to paddle, want to be able to get on the board and just go. So I've been kind of pulling that together into multi-day types of events and being able to do the things I love around the globe and having fun doing it and learning in the process.
And it sounds absolutely epic too. The one you were telling me about when we first met, it was Iceland, right? The coast to coast.
Yeah.
280 miles or something. What was that?
280 miles. And this was you start at the north part of Iceland, and it was a stage race where you basically start out and it's got different stages. It's 280 miles cumulative, and it's mountain bike, it was paddling, and it was run and trek. So it was really, really rugged terrain, which me and my partner love. We love getting into unfamiliar terrain, unfamiliar weather, because that's where the growth is. That's where that's where the magic occurs. So being able to fly in from Tampa, Florida, and getting into Iceland was a pretty epic event.
It's awesome, man. Yeah, that sounded really cool, man. When you were telling me about that, I was like, dang, like I've never pushed my body to that kind of high level before. Maybe I'll get out there with you.
The one thing that I think about, like, as you even say, 280 miles, obviously you're taking different terrain, but like, then how do you evaluate in terms of mental preparation as you're in, so intra-activity, but then even like pre, right? You're kind of mentally preparing. What does that look like in the pre and intra as you're developing kind of like that mental preparedness to get through some of these obstacles?
Yeah, that's I love every part of it. So, there's people that just want to show up for the events and they want that feeling at the end. But, the Marine Corps taught me the love of the game. Everything from the first step you take all the way to the end step that you take. And me and my partner, we love every single aspect of it. So we're big programmers of trying to figure out how to prepare ourselves, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, to show up and be prepared for that particular event. And I think we like the ability to put a program together to get ready for something like that as much as we like actually doing the event. But as far as the physicality, if you look at it, I'm coming from Tampa, Florida. I'm going to not only cold weather, hyperthermia weather, and I'm also going into altitude. I'm going into hills, and I'm going into really, really rough terrain. Totally different than, what you have in Tampa, Florida. But you take what works for you here. So everyone, I show up and they say, "Hey, where are you from?" I'm from Tampa, Florida. Like, "Oh yeah, you're going to have a problem here." I says, "Well, no, not actually." Because, if I'm working out and you have clients and stuff like that, if I'm working out in Tampa, Florida, and I'm putting a 3-hour session in, a combination of weightlifting, jump on the bike and do a run, and I start, and it's about 90 to 100 degrees and it's high humidity, what is that doing? That's really putting a tax on my body, and I'm loading my body up. So when I show up at like a cold weather place, I'm not spending 33% of my energy getting, trying to cool my body. Now I have that in the bank. But as far as what we focus on is we take each day apart and we look at what is that load going to look like on our bodies? What is that going to look like on us emotionally? What is that going to look at us spiritually? And we're very honest with ourselves. Where's your strong points? Where's your weak points? Where do you think that you're going to, have a low? And we try to work through all of those things. So we war game the whole thing all the way through. But at the end of the day, what we are both doing in our programs is we are physically loading our body up. We are recreating. We're not doing exactly the same thing. I can't recreate Iceland and Tampa, Florida, but I could put the strain and the load on my body. And I'm going to do it for those amount of days. But then the exciting part is, what skills do I need? I now I have to go into, wow, man, this is all functional. And guess what? There's going to be a lot of mobility. It's going to be a lot of agility work required going between rocks and really uneven terrain. So now I have to figure out, how do I do that? So now in my program, I got to figure out, hey, this exercise here I'm doing today has a reason. It has a reason because it adds up to something I'm trying to achieve. And, you look at the domain of strength, power, and stamina. Now, when I'm getting ready for these events, I really got to look at stability because, having unstable in that type of terrain is you're injury prone. flexibility, mobility, agility. So it's a lot of fun to try to figure all of that out. And what really complicates our lives is this isn't just the first thing we're preparing for. There's other things out there that we are doing throughout the year. So it really, really complicates our program when you're trying to be good on the water, you're trying to be good in the mountains, and you need to have demonstrable capability in all of those. But at the end of the day, I would say that the number one principle is you could train for anything, anywhere, and you just have to be creative. You have to, be focused, and you have to be able to think about it from the perspective of, hey, I can put a strain on my body in Tampa, Florida, just like any place I'm going to go around the world.
That's good. One more question leading into that, because I find it really interesting in terms of that aspect of like you're called going into the cold, so you're trying to have probably somewhat of a thermal protectant as well when you're going to the heat. Like, do you try to keep your body fat percentage at a certain percentage when you're going into it, when you're thinking about like, okay, I need to be at this cardiovascular load, but then also a strength training load as well? Where are you at kind of like in the physics of your body when you go into something, maybe in a hot temperature versus a cold temperature environment? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the great thing is that I have learned to switch back and forth. I'm a Marine. We're supposed to climb any place. We should be able to pick up and go anywhere around the world. And that was a great skill that was taught to me. And the number one thing is don't care about the weather. I burn 0 calories on what the weather is. I don't think like, oh, I wish it was this or I wish it wasn't this. And that's the beauty of why me and my partner are so good together, is that we spend 0 calories on the weather. We actually do better when the weather is the worst, because we tend to be on the bigger side of these types of athletes. Okay, he's got about 30 some pounds on me. But when you think about prepping yourself and what is optimum for me, I will say that my optimum weight goes between 176 and 178, and I stay in that range. Very rarely do I get out of that. And I try to keep my body fat between 8 and 10%. But the good thing is that I have learned cold weather, that I get to cold weather and it absolutely is, it's actually a breath of fresh air for me, because I'm not spending that 33% of trying to cool my body. Now I have the reverse. Now I have to warm my body. So I can do that by taking in calories. And my body, I've trained my body to respond to all different types of fuels, depending upon what's available to me. So I understand I'll keep my body temperature at a certain rate based upon what calories and types of calories I'm taking in, and what is my level of effort. Like there are guys who will go out there and pound it and like, okay, I'm going to go out there, but I'm looking at this from the perspective of, hey, wait a second. I'm doing this for 5-6 days. And on this particular one, there's great athletes that fell off the race simply because they were approaching it as a one-day event. So being able to use calories to keep my body temperature and using movement, I've trained my body to be able to stay at a certain temperature range. Now, on the outside, it sucks. Trust me. When you got wind and rain and snow and sleet coming at you, but the great thing is your body after so many years. I'm 40 years at this. I know exactly what my body temperature is, and my partner knows exactly what his body, and we know exactly what we need to do if we're running into problems. And I have to tell you, Iceland, we were on every single day. We were on the tightrope of going hyperthermic, but we knew where that line was, and we knew how not to cross that line. And that was done with the calories and the type of movement that we were doing.
Okay, there's so much I want to unpack here. The first thing was you said the word program, which we harp on this all the time. Like if you don't have a plan, right, going into any kind of training, even if you're just a general population person and you're trying to achieve some kind of weight loss or muscle goal, you need a program, or else you're winging it and it's not effective. So what is that? I'm curious, man. What does the program look like? Maybe a little bit more on the specifics. Because obviously we met in the gym. You were functionally strength training that day. Like what does like a week look like? What are you doing? Strength, endurance, movement? Like how do you break it up?
Yeah, so it depends on where I'm at in the prep phase. Like this last weekend, I was in the Ocala National Forest, and I was scouting out a potential, putting some friends together. I was just running through a potential heavy off-road half Ironman, right? It was going to be a trail run, going to be a paddle, and it was going to be a bike. Everything went well. The trail run went well. The paddle went well, but I didn't account for the blowdowns and the stuff like that. So I didn't get the full length based upon some trails being closed. So I ended up doing about 50, 60 miles of that. But the programming, like this week, if I just give you an example, I go on a 6-day cycle, and I'm kind of in a slow build up phase because I got a lot of things out there that are coming up. So there's a minimum in my book always of there will be no less than 3 strength power sessions a week. And those are long sessions because that's where my gains are made on the being able to get my body accustomed to heavy loads. So, the thing that most endurance athletes don't realize is that when the strength and the power is transferable to the stamina piece. I'm also building stamina in the gym as well. So if I start on a Monday, it starts with a warm up, a 5K row on the row, and then I'm going to move into some functional work. And these are long functional work, and these are designed to not only give me the strength and the power, but I'm also getting a little bit of benefit inside of the stamina piece. So, for example, on Monday, it was very lower body focused. It was very lower posterior chain. It's going to box squat, and I'll gradually bring up the weights. I'll start with 12 reps, go down to 10 reps, 8 reps, 6 reps. And then in between it, though, what I'm doing is I am in a vest. I'm in an 18-pound vest, which gives me a different load. Interspersing that with dips, weighted dips, interspersing that with push press. And I'm giving myself about 45 seconds to 60 seconds just to get my heart rate down. And I just go through that cycle, and then then I'll go and start working, military presses and things like that. But the core element is that would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is I'm out on skills. I'm out on getting the stamina piece. But I would say that I'm in a position where I wake up early, and I don't like to do a session less than about 2.5 hours, simply because it's what my body is accustomed to. It's been that way for about 40 years. And, the ability to focus on those goals, because the program has to be every single rep, every single set has to add up to this is what's preparing me for that. But programming is absolutely key. I mean, if you do not get a good program down, you're not going for a goal. You're basically you're wasting time. And I know that probably I'm going to throw something out here for discussion, but I would say that probably a lot of your clients will have episodic episodes with motivation, or they come in and out of a program, or they fall off of a program or something like that. And I think that goes to them being able to really, really center on a goal. My goals are very specific, and after 40 some years, I know exactly what I have to do. And me and my partner, we say, hey, listen, there's some predators out there, and we've lived with predators for 40 years, professionally and personally. And when you have a predator out there, a predator is defined as, if I don't bring my A game, he doesn't bring his A game, we're going to get chewed up. We are just absolutely going to get chewed up. It's not going to be pretty. That's a predator. So for all your clients, I would say, hey, we're men. We do best when there's predators out there. If there is a goal out there, your body just goes now into it knows. So you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, it's like, I don't feel like doing it. The predator comes right in your brain and go, there's a predator out there. So, just take motivation off, replace it with a predator. Motivation it comes and goes, right? Depending upon how you're feeling on what particular day. So, but a predator is ever present, and the predator is out there, and your body instinctively, spiritually, emotionally, physically knows what it has to do. And if it's a good enough predator, you don't have a problem with motivation, because you know the feel of not being prepared for something is painful. Pain retains. Pain always retains. So for your clients, I think it's great that people do different things, but I really think that they should have a better goal than I want to lose weight, I want to have bigger biceps or something like that. It could be anything. Throw something out there. Go into a competition. Competitions are great. They're forcing functions. Do have them develop their own competition, their own challenge, whether it's a functional challenge, add it up with some type of endurance event or something like that. And it's all scalable. 1 mile to one guy is 100 miles to another. It doesn't really matter. The amount and the distance doesn't matter. It's just relative to that individual. And they'll start having that change. They'll have that spiritual change, that emotional change where they can do that. So predators, we have to have them.
It's so funny how like we're training for different stuff, but our splits are the same. Like we just talked about this in another podcast, the programming. I'm very much, and you're kind of similar, like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, strength and powerlifting. And then the other days are we either play a sport or, we'll do some kind of outdoor functional stuff. But tell them a little bit about kind of, when it comes to the predator or the goal with our coaching program, we focus on the why and, what's the reason behind why somebody has joined us in this thing. And it's oftentimes emotional, there's something in their life they're unhappy about. So, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that that rang true here, and I was just talking about this on a previous podcast that I was a guest on, but this idea of building the discipline of like habits, right? And I love the idea of putting a predator in play, right? Because somebody's coming out, somebody's going to take my spot or something, somebody's going to take it from me, whether it's, whether it's you're thinking of it's towards somebody else, or that one of my coaches told me it's the drunk uncle that always wants to talk to you in the morning, right? I can't get out of bed because, the drunk uncle says I'm not good enough. But there's this idea that motivation only lasts so long. And typically people are going to have that like level of motivation in the first 30 days. But what I always try to do is really guide them through that there's 3 different stages as to what you're talking about. There's the grind phase. And if you can get through the grind phase, then you're going to see growth on the other side. And then typically that growth phase, if you really can invest into that, you'll see gold. And so I give them these 3 stages, but it only comes with the act of discipline, right? And that predator mindset is that somebody's coming to take it, but I have to get through that, right? I have to get through the level of boredom. And that's what we see in a lot of guys today that maybe were competitive back in their early 20s, maybe even mid 20s, but then they lost this like competition side of them. Like they don't want to compete anymore. And so then things get bored and really stale really, really quick. I guess a question back to you then is like, and it probably falls directly in line with that predator mindset, but how have you been able, 30s, 40s, and now, what are you, late 40s, early 50s?
No, I am 61.
Oh, gosh. Way off
right?
here.
Yeah.
Way off here. But
I think I the same thing.
You just
great.
now became my favorite podcast. Thank you.
So this idea now of maintaining that level of competition. So maybe speak into that. I know it probably falls in line with that predator mindset, right? Some of these take it, but like, why do you think some guys lose that that level of competition with, number one, kind of the standard of their health, and then maybe even, a lot of big guys just want to go after like that driver of money, right? I need to accumulate more. But you've kind of taken both sides of that, which has been awesome.
Yeah, I have to relearn this lesson every single time, and it's what I call you don't lose anything, you give it away or you sell it, and you just alluded to that, where you trade it for something else. And when I was in my early 50s, I went out to the National Outdoor Leadership School, and I thought I was mentally, physically, spiritually prepared for it, skills wise, physical conditioning, And we did a climb of this mountain, and I was a lead climber, and I was very proud. I was older by at least about 17, 18 years of everybody, and I felt really, really good about it. I was lead climbing the whole day, breaking trail, figuring out routes, and I felt really, really good. On the way down, we were able to unrope, get out of our ropes and our harnesses, and just down climb. It became glacier, and ice became rock. And I have to tell you, it was one of the most embarrassing things to me professionally, because now all of a sudden these young guys were just flying down like monkeys, literally. I mean, they just became dots. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening here? And I am just moving slow, and I'm feeling it. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm in my head, and I'm going, what is going on here? And I started making excuses, and I started, okay, well, I'm like, stop it, stop it. I had been out of the Marine Corps for about 3 years, and I wasn't doing obstacle courses. I wasn't doing agility work. So I gave it away. So I didn't lose anything. I gave it away. I failed to, it's a use it or lose it skill. And everything that we do in the gym is a use it or lose it skill. Everything we do on the bike, everything we do in the boat is a use it or lose it skill. And I think that, here's the subtle shift I would say to talk to your clients. Because the great thing about aging, and this is where gold is, whether you're in your 30s, your 40s, or your 50s, if people are so focused on, hey, I'm not good at this, or I used to be able to, they join, I call it the I used to tribe. I used to be able to do this and stuff like that. If you can get them to realize that the goal is, if you're struggling through something, that's where all the money is made. And if you embrace your weaknesses and look at it as literally, weakness becomes a strength as you start getting older, if you have a mindset that says, I'm going to attack those weaknesses. I mean, nothing makes me and my partner more excited than when we find something. It's like a carpenter that gets into a house. He's like, oh, great, I'm going to have to redo all of this, right? He'll find something on himself. I'll find something on myself. We learn, we do an after action. We come back and we're like, all right, here's a weakness. I was weak here, I was weak here, and I was weak here. Okay, what's the plan? How do I fix that? That goes into the new program, right? But as I realize, as you get older, people want to always be good at things, and they always want to be at their best and stuff like that. That's not where the money is made. The money is made because I am making new neural connections that either I previously had, I'm lost, but now I'm reconnecting. I'm getting a multitude of benefits off of those things. So if it's okay, if it doesn't matter what I used to be able to do, it's what I can do today. And it's that struggle. That struggle is everything. And being able to transcend that and get out of ego, get out of emotions, get out of a counter agenda other than, hey, I'm going to work hard today. That is the death of any great athlete, is ego, agenda, counter agendas, and emotions. If you can get them away from that and show, hey, you're making progress, and embrace it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree. I think most times it's like people, maybe they like undervalue themselves or like undermine themselves, or the whole like my best years are behind me thing. That's like a big part of like what we're coaching our guys. Most of our guys are 30s, 40s, but I mean, not to call anyone out, but you're in better shape than all of them, And so it's like, that just goes to show you that it's the use it or lose it thing. It's like, you just got to keep going. I want to run back to, you said something about the food. The food you eat specific foods for that, different fuel for different things, obviously, but like for like the thermogenic thing, let's talk a little bit like nutrition wise. I mean, what are you doing? Do you follow a specific type of diet? Avoid certain things? Give us a little kind of insight into that.
Yeah, I'd say my focus is three things. Number one, it's for performance. What fuel do I need for the optimum performance? Number two is what food do I need for the optimal recovery? And then number three falls into the spiritual, the emotional, the social. What foods do I like to enjoy with friends, family, and sharing those things? But number one, it always comes down to performance. What is the best thing I can put in my body? Okay. Do we put, crappy diesel fuel inside of a Ferrari? No, we do not. Okay. And if you just think about it that way, everybody has the ability to figure out what works best for them. We're our own best labs, and I don't, people always ask me, they come up to me and they say, well, what do you eat and stuff like that? But the key thing I tell them is, listen, there's over 6 billion people on this planet with so many different genetic combinations that the most important thing you can develop is a self-awareness and an evaluation criteria of what works best for you. But there are some other general rules I follow. I eat whole foods. I do not eat any highly processed foods because I find it's counterproductive to me. I stay away from alcohol. I will drink alcohol, but I enjoy alcohol at certain times. But as I get older, I realize that, hey, it is actually degrading my performance. So therefore it goes. As far as the macros, I'm heavily on the protein side because of the amount of work I am doing for both performance and recovery. I'd say more heavily on proteins and fats, and I use very sparingly the carbohydrates. But as soon as I get into the mountains and I get into events, it's generally a quest for as many calories as I can get into me. But I'm trying to find the highest quality of calories. And I would say for anybody out there that if you just stick with whole foods, you just stick with, getting away from ultra processed foods, seed oils, staying away from those types of things, and just being very conscious. And you change the dynamic when you say, what is the food that I need for optimum performance? And performance could be, I have to go give a briefing tomorrow. I have to go, I'm going to be, really, really working hard. There is an optimal fuel that you will figure out that makes, I know when I have to do heavy intellectual tasks of what types of foods I should stay away from, what types of foods I should eat. I know when I'm going to go put a 4-hour, 5-hour session out there, I know exactly what types of foods I need to eat, what I have to replenish with, and how to do that. And then when I get out on larger events, it generally, I'm a multi-fuel. I can go off fats, I can go off proteins, I can go off carbohydrates. And there are times I have to, that is a important ability because I might have, depending on where I am in the world, there might be a shortage of something and I have to be able to respond to that. That's part of the resilience piece of being able to roll with it, because you're not going to have optimum conditions all the time. You're not going to have the best fuels. You're not going to have the best conditions, but just relaxing. But if I say I'm going to use what's in front of me right now for performance, for recovery, and then enjoyment, I think in America we have it reversed. It's all about enjoyment, right? And it's about feeding the emotional self instead of the physical self. But I think that's an important part of our lives. Food is a social event. It's a celebratory event, and you should include that as part of your program as well. I think that's equally as important.
Yeah. I think we did an episode, at the beginning of everything, like a year ago, about like intuitive eating, which is basically what you were just talking about. It's like if you really are in tune with your body, you know kind of what you need in certain times, right? Like you've been working out pretty hard. Like my body, I know when I need to eat some more protein, I start craving things like red meat. I start craving more like, animal protein, stuff like that. When I'm craving more carbohydrates, it's probably because I've been doing more endurance stuff. My body's like, hey, we need more of this energy right now, So I love that, man. That's what most people are just not in tune. It's like they're just shoveling some food in their mouth real quick on lunch so they can get back to their work, or at dinner, they're looking at the TV, eating. We're not present with our food. And so then the relationship between the food and our body is going to be diminished too.
Yeah, I think one of the things is when I talk to people, and if they truly, the true want to hear, I think that we make a choice every day whether we want to be superhuman or not. And being superhuman starts with self-awareness. I mean, you have to understand, where are you right now, spiritually, emotionally, physically? And, I wake up each morning, I do the same thing. I've been doing it for 40 years. Okay, where am I at right now? And I kind of grade what's going on. Okay, here's a danger area here. I'm a little low on the emotional side for various reasons, or spiritually, or something like that. Life's a full contact sport. We don't go through life and everything is hunky-dory. There is nobody in this world that hasn't taken spiritual hits, emotional hits, physical hits, and stuff like that. It's just a part of life. It's just whatever. But if you have self-awareness and you understand, and you are tied into, what are your goals, and what is thinking about that predator I put out there, intuitively, your body is so smart, it knows exactly what it needs to do. But you have to allow it, and you have to get rid of the noise. You have to get rid of, and you have to spend some quiet time, which is very hard for people. But you have to be introspective. But that's why, when you're doing long distance events and you're doing these things, and I have zero distractions. I train with no music, no podcasts. I am in the moment. And because I need to be in the moment, because I need to understand, I need to clock my body. I need to have self-awareness. I need to understand what my body temperature is. I need to understand what my output is. And I don't use any electronics. I want to be able to do that just by sensing of where I am right now.
Yeah, I think that is something that I would like to dive into a little bit more, because I think there's this element that we live in today. You were talking about how that we can say this is probably like more like a world problem than just geographically in the United States, but like we are just always people that want to be entertained, right? Whether it be through our phone, whether it be through events, sporting, or whatever. Like people just want to be entertained. And one thing that I've noticed, I've actually taken out the headphones and started working out, and how important that is to be bored almost in your workouts so that you can be deliberate about your thoughts and the processing of your thoughts. Because you were even mentioning as you were sliding down that hill, right? With these guys in front of you, that like you had to be present with your thoughts at that point. Like I have to really kind of work through that processing. And those are just like those incremental layers that you feel like you're growing. Hey, I got to tweak this area, because there's an element of boredom that always comes in play. Like, man, this is extremely difficult. Do I want to do this anymore? Well, I got to push through this. So that in your training is that's so like unique in terms of like being present with your thoughts. So talk about that even a little bit more, just like that present of like that thought pattern of like how you're directing your thoughts and being self-intentional about that.
Yeah, I was very fortunate that I chose a profession that required you to be present, or you were going to get punished very hard. You were going to get punished physically, you're going to get punished emotionally and spiritually and stuff like that. So I, I, it's not something I came to on my own. I was mentored by some great Marines and some phenomenal military athletes and just phenomenal individuals. And it was a journey of taking all of these great practices and stuff. But if you take activities, and then all the activities I do requires presence, or else I'm going to get hurt. Okay. If I'm not focused in the moment on a mountain bike in Iceland, coming down a very, very rough piece of terrain with a lot of obstacles, if I'm not present, I'm going to get hurt and I'm not going to be able to perform correctly. So when I talk about every single thing adds up to getting after that predator, I'd say it's the spiritual and the mental game is equally as important as the physical game. And there is no room for entertainment. We have to be in the moment. And part of what I loved about the Marine Corps was all the implicit communications between a team and working together. And that has only occurred through presence. When I'm with my partner of 25, 30 years and we're out there, I'm married. It's not my life partner, it's my adventure partner. Okay. But when we're out there, we have to be present. And we have to communicate back and forth, because that is gives us the ability to have a greater output than just one individual out there. So our team output has got a high output, and we're feeding off of each other, and we're measuring each other all the time. You can't do that if you have an entertainment mindset. You're climbing a mountain. I have to be 100% present. If he's lead climbing, he's focusing on where we're going. I need to figure out the bigger picture and keep an eye on weather. I need to, keep an eye on other conditions that are changing. So it allows him to do that. So that is a great skill to have in life. And especially whether you're, with your wife or with your best friend or anything like that, having the ability to sit with that and to be in the moment that's what makes you superhuman, because you're not focused on getting entertained. And in that, I'm not a very religious type of person, but I feel it inside myself when I'm on course or I'm doing an event. It is spiritual, because you're there in the moment. It could be the worst conditions possible, It could be the worst conditions possible. And knowing that you have in your tank, okay, I've been here before. I'm present with this. Yeah, my body is cold. I am tired. I am hungry. Being able to process through those things. And, all of a sudden your body goes, well, okay, you're cold, you're wet, but it's only 34 degrees. You can't get frostbite, right? You get frostbite under 32 degrees. That's the only time you can freeze. So you're like, all right, hey, great. I can't get frostbite. I could get hypothermia, but I can't get frostbite. So you're like, all right, great. I can't get that. So now how do I work up from there? But presencing, it's an exercise that anyone can do every single day, is just sit quietly for 5 minutes and just work through yourself and ask yourself the question, where am I at spiritually? Where am I at emotionally? Where am I at physically? Get rid of the headphones, get rid of the entertainment, and not only be self-aware, but be contextually aware. Okay. The other thing I like to do is, as an exercise, as I'm running or I'm on a bike, I want to be self-present, but I'm not in a cocoon. I need to be aware of my environment. So I have to teach myself those skills. So I try to remember things. Try to remember, okay, I'm keeping an eye on, as I'm going through, I'm still doing it. To maintain the skill of being with partners and teams, I'm clocking people in the gym of what they're doing, in my periphery. So I'm getting a good workout mentally. I'm getting a good workout spiritually. I'm getting a good workout physically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say on that, I do like when it comes to like lifting heavy, or if I'm going for something that I know I gotta push it. I like some heavy metal in my ears from time to time. That adrenaline from that, right? Just somebody screaming. It's just like, it does help in a sense. However, I've noticed I do also enjoy lifting from time to time without any music. But the biggest thing for me is the start and the end of my day. Complete silence. Like, I wake up in the morning, I don't put on any TV, I don't put on any music. It's just silent. And that's where I can be with my thoughts and be present and really capture, where's my mind going, right? Am I being distracted? How do I reel it back in? And then at the end of the day, for me, it's like, that's how I decompress. I'm talking to patients all day long. I'm doing meetings, calls, this kind of stuff. My brain needs to turn off, right? So like, when there's like constant input all the time, I don't think we give our brains enough time to process like everything, right? And so I love that, man. I train without headphones a good amount, actually. You see me in the gym.
I got a question though, because I took an evaluation. I recently went up to New York and I visited West Point, and so I saw a bunch of cadets, and obviously there was young cadets. But I evaluated, because I keep myself at a pretty high standard of fitness as well, and just keeping my body, and I'm like always trying to attain new goals and do various things. But I definitely saw, like, I almost thought to an extent, I'm like, is the Army a little bit soft on standards of physical activity? I don't know if that's something that maybe has shifted in the military, but I'd like to, and number one, thank you for your service, 28 years of service. Wow. But from that, is that something because you had a core group of guys within the Marine Corps that set that standard, or was that evolved over time? How did that form, or is it kind of globally, has that shifted in our military, that they become a little bit softer with their standards of physical activity?
Yeah, I've been out for 12 years. I can say, coming in the 1980s, early 80s, into the Marine Corps, it was a highly physical organization. Marine Corps is known as a highly physical organization, a high performance organization. But I would say that the quick answer is the military is a reflection of society today. And you guys have a really, really good sight picture on what is going on in society today in regards to kids' physical ability, in regards to adults' physical. You're starting to see it now. It's coming into the 40s now. I mean, in regards to those things. And I don't look at it as it's good, it's bad. I just look at it as this is just what it is right now. And, you're looking at guys that you're probably training guys in their 40s who never, ever participated in a team sport. You're probably looking at guys that never actually been hit in the face, never got into a fight. Those seminal things that were okay. And I'm not saying that's a better way of growing up or anything like that. It just, when you look at the military has to flex to what is available to them. and they are having a hard time with just getting viable candidates that are at the lowest level, based upon societal trends of we have an epidemic of obesity, we have an epidemic of diabetes, and we have an epidemic of not being able to do basic strength, basic power, basic functional fitness types of things. So you're going to see that is going to come across the military. It just has to show up just based on demographics alone.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Almost like there's less optimal candidates to pull from because the
Yes,
health of
exactly.
our country is just so. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, and the thing
And the
with
trend
the
line
kids, man,
is when you start looking at 2030 and beyond, it gets worse. And it's a global problem. It's not just a United States problem.
definitely. Yeah, I think the United States maybe is the leader in this problem, but it doesn't mean we're the only ones dealing with it for sure. Awesome, man. Man, one more question I have for you before we kind of maybe wrap up a little bit and let you kind of tell us more about what you're doing. We talked about physical, we talked about nutrition, we talked about how you're training. What do you do as far as like, daily mental preparation, any kind of mindfulness, spirituality? Like, what are you doing on that front? Any like habits or practices you have, like specific things?
Yeah, I'm a victim of habit. And, I like to have a very solid routine. I know what is, I wrote my own owner's manual. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. And what works for me is exactly what you do every single morning, which is quiet. Nothing. Just go through some stuff. And if something pops up, I just clear it. I'm like, okay, or I identify it and go, okay, here's something I need to keep an eye on today. And before I end the day, the previous day, I know exactly, as far as what I'm going to do the next day in my program. I know down to what I need, and I prep the night before. So there's no looking for this or looking for that. So the vehicle is loaded, the bag is packed, everything that I need for that particular day. My breakfast is figured out, my fueling is figured out. So it's really what it comes down to is I have a very peaceful morning. I think I'm introspective. I think through what it is I have to do that particular day. I do visualize of what needs to be accomplished in the gym, what needs to be accomplished on the run, the bike, whatever it is that I'm doing. I have breakfast. I sit quietly. I don't look at a phone or anything like that. I try not to do any electronics until after I'm done with working out because I have to jump into work and do things like that. Uh, but I do make sure that everything is prepped up prior. And prepping is not just stretching; it's also, like you said, it's the spiritual and it's the emotional. And a very simple thing I just go through is I just start. Okay, where am I at spiritually today? 1 to 3. You know, three being the best, one being the worst. Where am I at emotionally? Okay, why am I feeling something emotionally? Identify it. Can I deal with this right now? Is it something I can resolve right now, or is it something I need to work through? At least identify it and know it's out there. It's something that I need to be. And the same thing with physically. Where am I at? Where am I at with hydration? Where am I at with sleep? Where am I at with nutrition? And where am I at ready to execute today's day? So before I even start the day, I'm primed. I already know exactly what I'm doing. So I've taken off the table anything, any distractors. And I think it's so important to show up each day spiritually, emotionally, and physically prepared. And doing those types of things help me to get to that point.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. One of the big things in terms of like that priming, like you're gearing up the day for the purposes of like I'm going to execute the deliverables. That's one thing that even I started doing, like preparing my protein shake the night before, putting it in the refrigerator. I don't need it like it's a non-negotiable because it's already prepared for me. Those things are, you don't realize that that's a decision you have to make in the morning during your optimal peaking like thought hours. That one decision could take away from maybe a little bit more of an important decision that you would need to make during that priming hour. I love the idea too. So we had built out a scorecard, and we focus off at our pillars. And so I asked, all of our clientele to do essentially a 5-minute reflection at the end of the day on the scorecard, and they just make a circle, and it's based off our pillars. So mind, spirit, work, fuel, movement, sleep. And I have them scale it at a 1 to 10. But what I'm actually going to be taking away from you, I love the idea of just doing it in the threes. And the reason why is because, like, you can gauge things very clearly in 1 to 3, just like you can do 1 to 10.
Good, bad, man.
And it just gives you good, bad, or, good, indifferent, or good, indifferent, or bad. So the 1 to 3 is really good, and you still can come up. I have them dial in a percentage based on that, but I asked them, where did you score low in one area, and then what's your focus point going to be tomorrow to like improve that by a couple points. But I love the
Yeah.
idea of just dumbing it down into really a 3-point system of like, hey, I can quickly grab onto whether it's 1, 2, 3. When you get into that 10, although it's easier for me, some guys, they're like, oh, well, I was at a 5 maybe, but what is a 5?
Yeah.
So I like the idea of just, hey, were you good? Were you okay? Or were you bad?
Yeah. And what helps
Yeah,
too
that's
is to help reinforce it is if you're doing workouts with people and you're doing it in a group environment, is to, team people up. Because me and my partner, we do it each morning. We're like, okay, where you at? I'm here. All right, got it. All right, what's going on? You might have a nagging, you might have some fatigue or whatever, and you just want to identify that right up front. I think it's important to learn how to communicate that. It's good because you learn how to identify things better, and you learn to have a different level of communication with people. And when you do it in a team environment, you throw out a task and you say, okay, where are you at? And you just have people check in with each other, and then they go execute that, and then they check in with each other after the end of that. Where are you at? We do it in the morning, and we do it when we wrap up that particular day. Some days the days don't wrap up, but I think it's a great skill, and it just teaches you. It gets you into self-awareness, and it's just something that's in your hip pocket all the time.
Well, tell us a little bit about then. We want to dive into definitely what you're doing, not right now specifically, and then you have a nonprofit you're working with and very closely with. So if you could tell us a little bit more about that, and then what specifically, maybe what's on the horizon in the near future for you.
Sure. So the season has filled up for 25. And well, first of all, I have to close out, 24. I have a few events coming up. I'm going down to Key West to do a half Ironman myself, self-directed. I'm just testing out some principles. And I'm going to do what's called an Australian level try, which is open water swimming for about 2 miles. It's going to be a prone paddleboard for 2 miles. And it's going to be a 8-mile surf ski. And it's going to go around the island of Key West for a total of 12 miles. That kind of ends up the season for me for 24. And then I run right into 25. I'd say the three predators out there are, the biggest one is going to be in November. I'll be down in Patagonia for a pretty extended trip. The mileage hasn't been figured out and the modalities haven't been figured out, but it's going to be in some pretty tough terrain, tough weather for probably about 8 to 9 days. Myself and my partner will do that. Prior to that, we'll be in Lander, Wyoming training for that event in probably the September timeframe. And there's going to be a bunch of spin-up events. In April, I'll be in Croatia for a kind of, I would call it a pentathlon. It'll be an open water swim. It'll be a paddle. It'll be a stand-up paddle. It'll be a run, and it'll be a bike. It'll start at one part of Croatia and go all the way down. That's about 4 days. So that's actually something that I'm very much looking forward to, doing that. Prior to that, I'd like to put a plug out there for an organization that I work closely with for the last 10 years. It's the Navy SEAL Foundation, specifically the Tampa Bay Frogman Swim, which is local. It is a 3.5-mile swim across Tampa Bay for charity, which is the third week in January. It's the Sunday right before Martin Luther King every day, every year. Last year, I believe, raised well over $1 million for the charity. And we have about 200 swimmers, 200 kayakers show up to support that. It is something I've contributed to because it's in my community. It's kind of my tribe I've been associated with for many, many years. And it is probably an epic event, physically. I'm the safety director for it. So I generally do the course a few days prior to check it out, but then I'm on water as the safety director. But I have to tell you, what a great energy. If you want to talk about, we all work out for reasons, but sometimes it's great just to get into a big event of like-minded people and see exactly what occurs on that. Also, probably the world's best after party ever. Epic. Goes on forever. So it's not just here's your crappy sandwich and whatever. It's really a world-class event. So if you could, in the show notes, if you could put the Tampa Bay Frogman Swim and the Navy SEAL Foundation, if anybody wants to be part of it. And you can track what I do on Instagram at Steve_Corchran, STEVE_Corchran, CORCORCORAN. And I generally post some of the stuff, probably about half of the stuff I do. And if you're interested in following me on that, or if you want to reach out and get ideas, I am passionate about getting a community of interest together of people that are just doing things their own way. And I like to learn from other people. I like to share. So that's how you can get a hold of me on that.
Awesome, man. Man, this was awesome. This was so great to do it. Maybe, we'll probably have to do another one too, to get a little bit more after you've done some of these things too, get you back on and hear how they went. Sure. Man, you're super inspirational to me as a young man, and you've kind of paved the way, and really just like the fact that you're just doing it. And I think a lot of people need to level up what they can do. They can do it, right? It's just a matter of holding themselves to that higher standard. So we thank you so much for coming on the show, man. And we'll definitely be in touch and have you back on here in the near future.
Thank you so much. It was fun chatting with you guys. And I wrote down a few notes from you guys. So this was a great exchange. I really appreciate the opportunity to share ideas and to talk about things that we're all passionate about.
We appreciate your example. And as always, we like ending it with live full fuel, baby. Live beyond limits. Let's go.
All right. Thank you, guys.
As always, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Nutrition Solutions. Head on over there, get high protein meals at your doorstep every week. With Full Field 15, you can get 15% discount code. Spread Farms, you can go over there right now, get beef delivered to your doorstep on ice. Phenomenal beef, and better than anything you're going to get at the grocery store. Get a 25% discount on your first order. That's promo codes right directly on their website, so you can head on over there. And then, as always, our lead sponsor, Alessi Functional Health. It's in Tampa Bay. If you're in Tampa Bay and you want to get to a pain-free future and you want to live your most optimal life, head on over. We'll take care of you. Dr. Alessi and Dr. Rennie Noel are the best in the game. Welcome to the Full Field Podcast.
I'm going to set what the new normal looks like in my life.
You're not limited by your genetics.
You have a superpower that is lifting people up.
So unfortunately, most businesses aren't going to use the highest quality ingredients.
What's your approach?
He's jacked.
I know he's jacked. That's why I'm asking him.
I don't think he lifts.
Yeah.
Consistency in everything that we do that really compounds. The only way we're going to get the word out is with you. Live full fueled, live beyond limits, baby.